You've probably seen armored columns force their way across open roads, unstoppable under fire. But what happens when the road itself turns against them? On August 26, 2025, 50 Russian Armata tanks advanced through what they thought was cleared ground. Within minutes, unmanned Minebots hidden in ditches shredded their lead vehicles, blowing turrets sky high. And while smoke filled the air, Ukrainian forces closed the exits, sealing them in. This wasn't just a battle, it was choreography, and it left commanders stunned. Before we move on, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Armored columns usually rely on speed and intimidation to force their way through opposition, but in this case, silence and stillness worked against them. What seemed like a weakened front was actually a carefully constructed illusion, and every tank rolling forward was being counted before the first shot was fired. Ukraine shut off its radar systems along the central and coastal approach routes the night before. No search radars, no tracking beams, nothing. The air remained cold and the screens stayed dark, projecting weakness to anyone watching. Russian and Chinese analysts monitoring the electronic spectrum saw a rare gift, a dead zone. They interpreted the absence of emissions as proof that Ukrainian defenses had thinned, maybe even abandoned that sector altogether. It was the type of error that only made sense if you thought your adversary wouldn't dare lower their guard. As dawn crept in, Wagner mercenaries moved first. Columns of mechanized vehicles and trucks rolled forward with confidence, headlights dimmed, engines humming low through patches of fog. Their advance overlapped with armored units from the regular Russian army and several Chinese crews assigned to test the corridor. Convoys spread across farmland, rattling fences, crushing dirt paths and sending exhaust into the morning air. From inside the vehicles, the stillness around them felt almost reassuring. No missiles, no artillery shells, no drone flights overhead, just open ground, leading west toward deeper Ukrainian territory. What they didn't realize was that the quiet wasn't natural. Every kilometer of their drive had been forecasted and mapped out days earlier by Ukrainian planners. Reconnaissance satellites had tracked staging areas. Spotters hidden near tree lines had logged convoy timings. Minefields and kill points had been marked with accuracy, then left untouched to seem unused. Even conversations over Russian field radios were being captured, their routines analyzed. When the armored columns thought they were undisturbed, they were actually walking step by step inside a blueprint drawn for their destruction. From local farm roads to the main corridor itself, the soundscape had been engineered to throw them off. A Ukrainian operative later described how eerie it was, hearing nothing but engines grumbling against the soil. Imagine 40-ton machines pushing steadily west, treads clawing across farmland and silos passing in the background, while the defenders stayed silent. The stillness spread like a trap closing in slow motion. Waiting inside ditches and dry canals were small, unmanned ground vehicles. Each one was about the size of a motorcycle, fitted with shaped charges designed to pierce under a tank's weakest point, the belly. Covered with netting and tucked beneath shallow soil, they resembled nothing more than abandoned equipment until activated. Crews on the Russian side had no reason to suspect these machines even existed along the approach. They pressed forward, never realizing the ground beneath them was alive with hidden weapons. These machines earned the nickname Ghosts among Ukrainians who watched them in testing. They didn't strike immediately or give away their positions by lighting up sensors. They simply waited. The moment they activated, drivers could guide them directly against treads and fuel compartments, setting off catastrophic blasts smaller weapons couldn't achieve. The attackers never saw or heard them until it was far too late. By powering down radars and abandoning any signal that could reveal positions, Ukraine fooled its opponents into thinking no defenses guarded the corridor. In reality, the silence was the bait, and the bait worked. Mercenaries, armored crews, and infantry all pushed deeper, unaware that every route they took had already been calculated. That was only the first stroke of the plan. Once the invaders moved far enough inside, the second stage transformed their confident push into one of the fastest collapses seen on that front. At first, the ground looked empty. Seconds later, it began tearing tanks apart from beneath them. The northern push started at 5:48 a.m. when UR-77 mine-clearing vehicles crawled ahead of the column and blasted long cord charges into the soil. The detonations shook the earth in neat successive lines, but instead of exposing mines, they only left scorched trenches across empty farmland. Crews inside the lead tanks called back to their commanders reporting clear ground. The way seemed open, and the trap was set. Armored units continued forward, T-15 infantry fighting vehicles followed the tanks, while BMP-3 carriers packed with soldiers rumbled in behind. For the Russians and their Chinese partners, this was supposed to be the easiest stage of the offensive. They rolled quickly, engines growling, steel treads grinding the soil, their hatches closed and guns pointed outward. Inside, crews convinced themselves that Ukraine had abandoned this line outright. That belief lasted until the first unmanned bots moved. From just beneath the dirt tracks, small motorcycle-sized machines powered up and lunged forward. Each carried a shaped charge designed for one task, piercing the belly armor that tanks could not shield. The first bot slammed hard under a T-14, the blast ripping through the undercarriage and igniting fuel. A fireball erupted, turret lifted high by the explosion, crashing sideways like a steel meteor. Another bot darted into the path of a BMP, detonating beneath its track and flipping the vehicle into a ditch. Within moments, a row of machines that had been rolling in formation was split apart by invisible attackers they had never been trained to expect. Shock turned into chaos. Infantry scrambled out of burning carriers only to be hunted by warm-mate loitering drones circling above. These wing-shaped craft hovered over the battlefield, locking onto heat signatures and radio chatter. Within seconds, mortar fire joined in, landing sharp explosions around men who had just leapt free from wreckage. Clouds of dust and black smoke turned the ground into a killing field, cutting visibility and separating squads from each other. Meanwhile, on the coastal axis, a parallel disaster was already unfolding. At nearly the same time, Chinese-built Type 726 landing craft pushed toward shorelines they thought were cleared by reconnaissance flights. Their bow doors lowered, and naval infantry prepared to run forward. Then, Neptune anti-ship missiles struck in fast sequence. The first slammed into the lead craft, tearing apart the deck and sending fire over the waterline. Another ripped open the rear vessel, blasting men into the surf. Those still alive dropped into shallow waters and scrambled under seawalls, pinned down, unable to regroup while more missiles stalked the bay. On land and sea, the pattern was the same. Ukraine's defenders closed every route. From the flanks, artillery batteries fired, guided rounds onto choke points. Anti-armor missiles streaked from concealed positions cut into hillsides. Drone operators hovered overhead, adjusting each strike to keep pressure on survivors trying to flee the corridor. Within minutes, what had looked like a highway deeper into Ukraine became a sealed pocket of destruction. Ukraine's plan revealed itself clearly. The powered-down radars had never been an oversight. The quiet spectrum was bait that marched mercenaries, armor, and naval detachments into a planned fire sack where every avenue of retreat was already closed. Engines ran hot against burning fields. Crews called frantically for support, but their routes were blocked. The attack that was supposed to be unstoppable collapsed into a pit of wreckage. And for Russia and China, the losses extended far beyond the battlefield. It was about to become an intelligence disaster. In less than an hour, the assault that was supposed to prove unstoppable ended in burning wreckage and chaos. Tanks, landing craft, and entire assault units were destroyed, but the greater gain for Ukraine lay in what was left behind. Radios scattered in ditches still held encryption keys. Abandoned command vehicles contained paper maps marked with future staging points. Captured laptops revealed frequencies and coordination channels meant to guide joint maneuvers. The wreckage was valuable, but the documents, codes, and data offered something far greater. Sometimes victory isn't counted in destroyed machines, but in the secrets pulled from their ruin.